Good morning, SKN. As promised, we have with us this morning Mr. Hensley, Daniel of ESO Trading Inc., and Ms. Euphemia Brice Robert, Executive Director of Brice Roberts Business Consulting Services, now joining us via Zoom in what is dubbed the Phase 1 of the Youth Leadership Development Program that was recently concluded. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Good Morning, SKN.
Good morning to you and good morning to the listeners.
Good morning and good morning to all who are tuned in.
Alrighty, so we'll begin this way. How did this collaboration come about to facilitate such a program?
Mrs. Roberts.
I will send over to you, Mr. Daniel.
Well, we have been working together for upwards of 20 years, Mrs. Roberts and I, developing training programs for young people. Worried as we are with the trend with respect to their social and leadership developments, we decided to come up with a program which seeks to prepare them, as it were, a little better so that the next generation of leaders would not become people who become leaders by accident. That is to say, you're not prepared, but since you were in the position the longest, you get the position. And that we wanted to develop some soft skills, some good social skills, and informed as we are by a World Bank study some years ago, which shows that employers, particularly, it was done in the OECS, but particularly employers in St. Kitts and Nevis, they were looking for employees who not only passed the subjects and so on and write. What they found is that these children didn't have, the workers didn't have any manners, and they were not very good at working in teams and dealing with conflict. So over the years, we have done a number of these programs, but this one, we decided to sharpen the focus on leadership, building, as it were, social skills.
Okay. And may I just add that I noticed Mr. Daniel said we've been doing those for young people. I think from a broader perspective, we are involved in performance management. So we do it for young, we do it for the not so young, whoever is ready to learn or open to learning.
Well, it's quite interesting that you spoke to what I would like to term accidental leadership. And I think that what you've done is to craft a leadership by design program where you could always pull, the leaders of tomorrow out, see what their qualities are for leadership. I want to now speak with you about the 5 E's of leadership. Can you give us an overview of this and its benefits?
The 5 E's of leadership, as Mrs. Roberts said, we have been looking at leadership issues throughout the 20, 30 years, and we have been looking at some of the very good people who have been writing about leadership. Peter Drucker, leadership is the lifting of a man's vision to higher heights. Warren Bennett speaks to managing people is like herding cats, but you can, if you can sense their purpose, you can get them to purr and kill your rats. Lots of different concepts. So what I did is to come up with these 5 E's of leadership, one of which, the first one is ethics, because ethics must drive any good leadership, any good leader. And I am sure we are troubled very often with the low ethics, at the leadership level. So we start to explore that. Then there is the question of education. We believe that leaders have to be continually learning and developing and growing and so on. And that education is central to remaining current, to remaining on the cutting edge. It is, I am told that the CEOs in America have to read upwards of 30, 40 books per year to remain current. Wow. Then the question of egalitarianism, another E. that you're not just a leader just so. You are supposed to be a leader to make a difference and to ensure that you narrow the gap, as it were, between haves and have-nots, or even between people who have access to power and those who don't. So it's to address an inequality. The whole question of equality, where you can balance the resources so that everybody feels a part of the process. And then there is the question of enterprise. We really want our young people to develop that feeling for enterprise, a la Steve Jobs or, Jeff Bezos, all of these magnets. But they started simple. And so we want young people in particular, and also the older persons, to have a sense of some kind of enterprise. So if you are an English major, you can write books and poetry and have them in the market, And also we want people to, because you're educated, we want you to add value to your education. In the Caribbean, we treat education like a adornment, But what we want to do is to use it through enterprise to add value to the economy, to add value to your own specific family and so on. And then there is the question of evaluation. We're spending a lot of money in the Caribbean, in our own society, and we're not evaluating whether we are reaching our goals, whether they are making a difference, and that leadership must make a difference. And I use the gas gauge in the car. When you drive your car, you look at the gas gauge to see the level of gas in the car. When it's on E, you have to fill up. So it's the same kind of concept. On the evaluation, you must continually ask the question, am I making a difference? Are things going according to plan? Should objectives be changed? What are the outcomes? And what do the outcomes be? So it's on that, in a nutshell, that's it.
And even as Mr. Daniel would have come up with the idea of the 5 E's, when I hear enterprise and he spoke to, yes, persons going into having that entrepreneurial mindset, I'm also reminded, and it's one of the points that we think it's important to draw to the attention of persons, that we could have an entrepreneurial mindset even while working as employees. And so it is having that thinking of innovation. So even if persons, whether or not persons go out on their own into enterprise, the organizations with which they're working would benefit from the entrepreneurial.
By focusing, as it were, on you, Ms. Brice Roberts, the leadership development on purpose, that particularly. Can you give us an overview of this module and the benefits?
All right, this is based on, just as Mr. Daniel's 5 E's is based on a book he's in the process of writing. The leadership development on purpose is related to a book that I'm in the process of writing. And it is based on what I call the best leadership development and relationship building model, which recognizes that leadership, effective leadership, is founded on relationships, the quality of relationships, and also founded on the quality of the individual, who the individual sees himself or herself as. And using the definition of leadership, which Mr. Daniel alluded to earlier, where I really love Peter Drucker's definition, where he speaks to leadership being the lifting of a man's vision to higher heights, the raising of a man's performance to a higher standard. So we use that as the basic definition. And in order to lift that vision, we need to, first of all, know who we are. So there are 3 modules to the program. The first one is identity and dreams, which speaks to who am I? What are my values? What is my vision? And for me to recognize that I'm a very important person, as I would say, a child of God. And so I'm a king, I'm a queen, I'm a princess, according to the sex, male, female, but we all must recognize that we are important, no matter where we were born, how we were born. So identity is important, and having a dream. As the Bible says, where there is no vision, people perish. Then, so that is identity and dreams. The other module is values and contribution. So it speaks to recognizing that from an interpersonal relationship standpoint, we need to look at how am I adding value to the other person? How am I adding value to society? So where I am today is based on value that has been added by others. So it's a case of a consciousness of being aware, how am I engaging with persons, the quality of engagement, and what could be said about the service, what could be said about what I'm leaving persons with. So recognizing those first two modules, identity and dreams, values, contribution, then we go into the core leadership, where we speak to lifting of a person's vision to higher heights. And for that, we use the acronym GIVES, where we use goals, that you need to be clear on your goals, I, influence, V, vision, E, engage, and S, service. So, and it's emphasizing that leaders are about servanthood. Leaders are about giving. And so that's it in a nutshell.
Indeed, indeed. I know you said you have both young, maybe some middle-aged and some older persons. How do you manage to teach these modules, both you and Mr. Daniel, that each age group understands it the way it should be understood?
Well, it's offered at different times. The program we just did was for the young people.
Okay.
So there are other times when we offer to the working age persons. So that program we just did was really targeting 12 to 18 years old, so that we could tailor it to suit that group. We ended up having a few persons older than 18, but to take into account your question, by having various groupings, various cohorts at different times. Previous to that, we had some weeks before that, we would have targeted the working population. And so this is how we deal with it. So we try to have persons according to their experience, their level of exposure together.
In learning that you dealt with people who were mainly between the ages of 12 to 18 years old, when you spoke earlier, Ms. Roberts, and you said leadership is about service, I was wondering if that surprised any of the participants in any way. Because when we think of leaders, particularly at that age, I'm assuming that we think that the leaders, as Mr. Daniel said, they're magnates, they're powerful. Were there any misconceptions as to that?
Well, I don't know. I cannot say that there were surprises to them. There may have been, I don't know. But one of the points which was emphasized was that even in the little things that we could start serving. For example, like I'd mentioned to them, we've been talking about service. We've been saying leadership is about service, but there are times I need help. I need help, particularly at the end of the program, with putting down posters or putting together my the various files that I have. And I'm not hearing anybody offering. So that was an opportunity for me to point out to them that we are not looking for a special occasion. We need always to be looking around us, not waiting to be asked, but seeing how can I help and help.
That says to me that you were sharp on the assessment bit of it, if I'm correct, Mr. Daniel. You were, pointing out that there were opportunities that they could take advantage of to serve, and that's very good indeed. As I want to talk with you now, I want to focus on the performance of the 9 individuals. So, in your estimation, how did the individuals perform, and were there any developmental changes that you noticed? And this goes to both of you.
Mr. Roberts.
Okay. Well, I must say, well, yes, at least the service orientation, that at least after it was drawn to their attention, then we saw that persons were being more open to assisting. So I thought that was key. Also, in terms of the readiness to speak out, because even for the closing ceremony, we had quite a number of the young persons. We had one of them hosting. We had 2 of them doing the overview. So in terms of the boldness to come forward, so there was a little hemming and hawing, a little nudging, but then we saw that openness to really stretching. So yes, so I can say that I saw that level of growth. And it was actually that they themselves, 1 or 2 would have actually said that yes, they feel much more confident And we also had parents speaking at the program at the phase 1 closing ceremony who spoke to the positives relative to their children.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes. Well, the most important thing for me was that in speaking to them about matters of ethics, because we have a society which is just accustomed that things go a particular way. My task was to bring to their realization that you will be challenged in life to make ethical decisions, and those decisions will be critical. And I think Mrs. Roberts will say, yeah, you make them now, but there are consequences after, And I think the critical thing for me was a level of raising a level of awareness that, you have to, you can't just be waltzing around in the world. You have to be careful. You have to be strategic. And as Mrs. Roberts' thing was purpose. You have to do things on purpose. And again, it's not an accident. So that I find that there was an awareness. And very importantly for me, there was widespread discussion on the matter. For instance,
Mr. Daniel, let me just put in, just reminded you about your drug example,
yes,
which I thought was powerful.
Yes, I was giving them the question on ethics, and I was saying, if somebody offers you $5,000 to go down Sandy Point to carry some ganja or cocaine, knowing that it will destroy people, then they were saying, well, 5,000. But when I began to raise the amount in terms of, okay, if they offer you 100,000, well, what about that? And then you got the kind of discussion from the students. So that the idea that you actually have to use practical examples. So, the Livingston kids, it's not a case of things relating to something in Ukraine. It is about dealing with real world issues. And I remember one of the students says to me at one of the sessions, someone stopped her, a male, stopped to ask her if she wanted a ride. And she says she remember I said to them, trust carefully. And then she said she refused the ride. And I said, why? She said, I don't trust it. I don't trust it. Okay? So it is that kind of alertness, awareness, and so on, which I thought, of course, 10, 12 weeks doesn't mean that we achieve all the things we want to do. So it's a work in progress.
I love the example. I love the moral dilemma, and I appreciate the reality of the situation, because for $5,000, obviously, that's not a lot. But when you raise it, then you get that level of discussion, because I need the money. Yeah. I can imagine they can do a lot with it. And so that becomes a conflict that's worth discussing.
Right.
I
So
understand yes. Yes,
so
sir,
the ethical issue is not the amount, is what you do. And I gave them examples of people saying, someone being fired for stealing a cake. And her concern was it was a small cake. So if it's a small cake, you shouldn't be fired. Only if it's a big cake, So we had those kinds of engagement. And I just think that we have to have more of these kinds of discussions to allow the young people to open up. If they are not doing it at the home, we are available, and the society must see that really what this is. This is ensuring that we can live in peace in St. Kitts and Nevis 40, 50 years from now, that we can eradicate a lot of the antisocial behavior. It's our first step, but it has to be continued.
And linked to that is the importance of having the young people be the foot soldiers, because it's very important. Very often the young are more likely to listen to other young persons. And so we see them as being trailblazers, foot soldiers, going into their respective communities, their respective schools, to make that positive difference.
Indeed, indeed.
All right, so that was phase one. There's a phase two, vision board project. Who wants to speak about that?
Yeah, well, phase two actually is really the implementation. Again, as Mr. Daniel is one, he's big on monitoring and evaluation. So it really captures that concept of evaluation. To what extent did you understand? To what extent are you implementing? So they were required to do a vision board, in which they were to have done it in phase one. The whole idea is that in phase two, it is what progress have you made towards your vision board? They were also to come up with a leadership project. The idea that we're reminded always, whenever we have a problem, we need to think solution. We're not talking about a problem over and over and over again. That is not our role as leaders. Our leaders are always, as leaders, we have to see what we could do to make a positive difference. So it was emphasized from the time you have a problem, think solution. And the solution may lie with you, or it may lie with you recommending to somebody, or you engaging with others. And so the phase two captures that implementation aspect, where they were also to do a leadership project, which they were to have submitted in phase one, and phase two at the end of it, that we check to what extent you carried out that leadership project. So it's really about action, action, action.
Yeah, I think I was able to say, and I think the parents and the students bought into this idea that we must stop asking children what you would like to be when you grow up, when you leave school, what you would like to be. What we need to ask them is what problem you'd like to solve. Okay? So if they say they want to be a policeman, they want to solve the problem of crime, but we need to shift the focus to ask them, just as Mrs. Roberts is saying, the solution. What problem I'd like to solve? Environmental degradation, that kind of thing. So shift the focus away from what I'd like to become to what, because you can become the thing, but you don't solve any of the problem.
Yeah, so the idea was a mindset shift, that how we see things differently. And actually at the session, one of the young people would have indicated that was a point that struck that individual forcibly, shifting the mindset. And another point, actually, at one point in the program, one of the persons would have mentioned how recognizing that as human beings, in terms of identity, we are mind, body, spirit. For us to excel, we need to look at what we are doing to nurture the mind, nurture the body, nurture the spirit. So that was very important from an identity consciousness.
Well, it has been an informative few minutes with you, and I can only imagine the benefits that can be derived long-term from the participants and graduates of this program. I'm looking forward to what else you collaborate on, and hopefully discussing that with you in the future as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Daniel and Ms. Roberts. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much to our two hosts. Thanks very much to the listeners. And we look forward to more organizations. I think very importantly, we needed to have mentioned that it was really a collaborative arrangement, so we had private sector, public sector on board with us. And so we're looking for more of that collaboration as we look to making that contribution to nation building, making a positive difference in the lives of the young people and beyond.